Welcome to the questionnaire.
Hope everybody will enjoy.
Are we recording?
Don't have questions.
On the questionnaire.
I just started.
The Questionnaire podcast.
Paying strict attention.
This incredible podcast.
The questionnaire.
Rated PG-13.
Sir, are you feeling all right? Yeah, I'm feeling phenomenal, ladies and gentlemen, because this is the questionnaire. I am the unknown factor, right? And I hope you got that comic in your hand. I hope you're reading. I hope you're enjoying something, man. I hope you're having some real pleasant memories. If not, yeah, let me Requiem for you. Yeah, with Chrisof Bocacs. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm doing really good. Like we said, off pod, it's morning here, so it's Monday morning. I'm feeling good. Excited to get into the week. Time.
Man, look, I can't lie. I kind of can't wait for what for me is tomorrow, for you is today. All the time travelers I bring on this show, I swear, you'd think it was Doctor Who related, because I'll get my boy back. You know what I mean? And for anybody, I don't know if that's out there to where anybody can see it, Chrisof. In all honesty, when you were on the show the first time, and my boy ran in, probably not, because I think he was in his underwear because it was bedtime, and I ain't putting that out.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So, but he was mystified, just in complete and utter wonder about the fact of you were in the sun.
Yeah, it definitely takes some getting used to, I think. Just like getting your heads around the time zone. But certainly because all my everyone I work with is in the US, so I'm just kind of used to it now. I always think in US time. Everything I do, I just think around US time, really.
Aren't you sleeping most of US time during the day?
Yeah, so usually I try and get up with enough time that is still a few hours left on the East Coast of the work day. To kind of get emails in. But yeah, a lot of essentially what generally happens is I before I go to bed, I might have one or two emails come through that I'll deal with, and then pretty much I just wake up with an hour or two before the East Coast workday ends, and basically have a day's worth of emails to get through. So it can be frustrating if there's urgent stuff, but it hasn't been a super problem yet. But yeah, obviously, if it's a time sensitive thing, I'm probably going to be asleep.
Well, I would assume you wouldn't get anything that had to be handled in less than a day. I would assume you have at least a day in most of those circumstances.
Yeah, and you usually have time. I think it's honestly, at least from what I've heard, more so with big two books or books where monthly books where they're really pushing the schedule where you need kind of quick edits and quick response time. But certainly because I've only just started doing big two stuff, and a lot of what I do is graphic novels or creator owned stuff. You have usually as long as you get back to someone within 24 hours, you're fine.
It's weird within the comic book community how many levels there are within that, because you bring up the big two specifically.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of
100%.
great creators. Yeah, we've had a lot of great creators on the show. A lot of them from everything from, running Kickstarters, which you can check out Chrisof's current Kickstarter for Requiem. It's down in the link below. We'll be discussing that in a few. As well as, those that are working for the big two, up to, the editor-in-chief and such and that. And the differences in it, man, as far as one is keep a Walmart pace, ostensibly. You know what I mean? All these books have to come out every month. And the other one is more of a mom and pop store, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would also add, because I do stuff for the book market as well. So that basically means I'm working with traditional book publishers who have comic imprints, right? So stuff like Scholastic, HarperCollins, First Second, all those kind of places, right? Where they're owned by a tradition, or they are part of a traditional book publisher. So they use traditional book publisher timelines. So they're often quite long as well, right? I think usually for a graphic novel, it's anywhere between through a book publisher, anywhere between 4 to 5 years is generally the turnaround on that. So but then you're right. If you're working with Marvel and DC, right, you're working on kind of a lot of the time you've got a month to turn it around before it needs to get ready to go off the bridge. Yeah, so it's it's so interesting because people often talk about this idea of breaking into the industry as if like once you've done it, you've done it. But I've found from my experience there's lots of different types of breaking in, right? You kind of just get in with certain people in certain places, in certain corners of the industry. And like there are plenty of Marvel and DC people I've spoken to who have asked me questions about the book market. So, and want to get in on that. So like it's so interesting how often like just because you're in one aspect and really connected and in a good position doesn't mean necessarily you have connections across like all aspects of the industry. I would say it's very labor intensive networking and getting ins everywhere. So I have a lot of respect for, there are a couple of people who just have books, with like every publisher. And I have so much respect for those people because it takes a lot of legwork and a lot of hustle.
Yeah, man, I'd fully agree. I think there's a couple of them I'd really have to think back of the individuals that we've had on. I don't think Erica's ever done anything for DC. Um, but I know we've had a couple individuals on the show that do. I mean, but I've noticed in that regard, it tends to be more writers that tend to do to that ilk.
100%.
Yeah, you don't see it so much with artists, which I think has a lot to do with the whole like to write a story and to do that, which is done by Mike Ruth, are very different labor intensive
100%.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the labor is just not the same, right? It takes me anywhere between like 20 minutes to an hour, and an hour is to write a comic page, and an hour would be very rare. Like that's when it's a really, we're talking maybe like a double page spread or something really intensive or formalistic where I've got a lot of details to communicate. But so max an hour. It takes anywhere from 8 to 12 hours for a professional comic artist to draw a page. So in terms of the time it takes, they're not at all the same or really comparable to an extent because we're talking about part of a day's work as opposed to an entire day's work.
That's crazy. And I think that's something that people don't often think about within the comic book community.
Not at all.
Yeah, is the layer of creators and everything that you have to go through. And I mean, we've had everything on the show from editors, inkers, colorists. I don't think there's a job in comics that I haven't had someone that did it. You know what I mean? At least once on the show at this point. Why do you think it is people look so much at the final product and never think of anything as far as the depth that went into it? And I mind you, you could say that about so many other things as
No,
far as film and television
no,
too.
this is a great question. So this you've just hit on what what I talk about a lot when I teach comics making. Is well, number one, I think people, in general, don't necessarily have a great literacy for how creative products get made unless they've kind of been involved in that, which is fair. Like, I don't know how an iPhone gets made. I don't know how a car gets made. Like so. I mean, it's not. There are so many different products in our lives and things we consume. And obviously, creative stuff's a little bit different, but at the same time, not yet. Like, we don't know everything about everything we consume.
I just have to say, as far as the iPhones, they're made in factories with suicide nets. As far as the cars, typically they're made part by part in several different factories, and then those parts are shipped to a different factory to all assemble into the car, which doesn't make any sense to
Oh my
me.
God.
That's a whole nother point. At least it's not as bad as the iPhone factories. They don't have suicide nets at the car manufacturers. That's a plus.
Yeah, look, and I would like people to know I do not have suicide nets in my home office. It's a happy place.
Oh my God.
Um, uh, um, but yeah, I guess so. There's that, right? Is that I think just naturally people tend to have a disconnect between the things that they consume uh, and how it's made, and that's just part of I think modern capitalism, right? There's so many layers between us and the people that make our things. Whereas if we're looking at like when you lived in like a village where you would interact with each person that made the thing that you consumed, but now with mass production, yeah, you all these things are so siloed. And then I think the other element that comes into it as well as when we're talking about comics is that we're really talking about roughly three different traditions, right? So we've got manga, we've got Euro comics, so Franco-Belgian comics, and then we have American comics. Now, obviously, there's a lot of cross-pollination between the three. Um, and in all traditions, you have artist writer teams and you have segmented labor. However, I would say that the hyper segmentation of labor that we get in comics, right? The fact that you have a writer, and then you have a penciler, and then you have an inker, and then you have a colorist, and then a letterer. That is pretty unique to Western monthly comics. So I think people don't realize that. Don't realize it especially if you read manga, right? If you're reading like One Piece, which is by one guy, it would be very reasonable for you to read a Western comic and assume, like read Invincible, be like, well, it's the same as One Piece. Robert Kirkman did it all. But the segmentation of labor, I think, is so specific to kind of how American comics formed. And again, obviously, you have that in other, in manga and in Euro comics, but I think American monthly comics has really got it down to a fine art.
Do you think that, I mean, because that was created specifically for American comics, do you think that was just
Yeah.
pure capitalism that drove that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's necessity, right? I think now it's transcended necessity in the sense that, because obviously there are some now monthly American comics that just have one person, like anything by Peach Momoko, right? Where Peach is pretty much doing it all and making it look easy. But I think now it's transcended, at least in my mind, it's transcended that. I think the specialty allows people to get really good at their work. And obviously there are some people who are good at everything and do, their line work's amazing, their color work's amazing, their inks are amazing. But there are plenty of creators who are really, really good at one thing. And I think that's the nice aspect of comics, right? So like, if you look at like creators who just focus on writing, like Grant Morrison would be a great example. Unless Grant Morrison taught himself to draw, we might have never seen comics from him if he was in if they were in a tradition that was just, the only way to make comics is you make it all yourself. And we'd lose a lot of incredible voices that way. So I think it's really great. And even now, if I think about like rising stars in the industry, right, or people who I could like, incredible creators, I think of people that are colorists like Jordi Belair. I think of people that are letterers like Hassan, So the nice thing is that the term creator gets extended for anyone who works on the comic, not just the person doing the art, not just the person doing the writing, So I think it's really lovely how that it's now kind of transcended that financial and scheduling necessity to, I think, be like a creative element. And my kind of feeling is like, why wouldn't I get someone who just letters, who, have just dedicated their entire life to this one discipline, to do it? Because they're probably going to be incredible. I bet, So not that there aren't like people who who can't do everything well, but I think there's something really amazing about like someone who spent the last 20 years just focusing on like how to color comics or how to letter comics. Like I think something really magical happens then in terms of their understanding of the form and how their skill set relates to the form.
And I fully agree, man. I think diversing, I mean, even over here on the show with the questionnaire, dude, I mean, it started off as, just me and a bad idea. And now there's a great team of people that help assist and run this show and make it look better and make all pretty graphics. Shout out to Shiro. And I definitely wouldn't want to run this show like Declan made Old Dog. I still don't know how he did that book. I'll be real freaking honest.
Yeah. I think you hear about those books, right? Those opus books where people are like, I need to do everything myself. And almost always the story behind it is like this person either worked on it for a decade or they almost like killed themselves making this book or both. So I think those books are incredible and I'm glad they exist. But like, there's a reason why certain creators who do everything, we don't get a book from them that often because it just takes time.
I mean, yeah, because you have to take it from a concept to a script to writing, then to inking, and son of a bitch, give me 1 second. God, I thought I turned on my
Yeah, of
fucking.
course.
No, I forgot to tune on my do not disturb like an idiot. But watch this. That's gonna be a pain in my
We've,
ass to edit.
we've all been there.
18 minutes. Okay. Sorry, I'm making mental notes.
You're totally fine.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, like I was saying before that quick edit, because I forgot to press a button. Sometimes you forget to press buttons. This is why teams are important, so people can check on stuff for other people and blah blah. And why Chrissy was awesome and came over and helped fix a tech issue before we actually started this particular quest. Shout out to Chrissy Wiseman. Check her on the first episode of season 3 with are you serious? Are you serious? Why? Oh my gosh, Declan, I'm so annoyed right now. No, Vincent Pereira, director of A
Incredible.
Better Place. Oh my gosh, that was driving me nuts a little.
Amazing.
Yeah. Have you seen A Better Place? I refuse to watch it because
No, I haven't.
it's apparently really, really, really deep. And then I'm reading Requiem today. The first 2 issues that Chrisof was cool enough to send me, so I was checking that out before we brought him on the show. You can check out the Kickstarter for episode 3. I said season 3. Whatever. They're for episode 3 of Requiem for the Kickstarter. It's right down there below. I feel, man, I read this comic and part of me with this situation that I've dealt with in the past year or 3 or however you want to equate it in my personal life, we're not getting into all of that. I'm never releasing that. But that's a different point. I feel like you're getting into a thing where this comics can get really, really, really personal and kind of sad.
Oh, for sure. And I think genre in particular, like heavy genres like hard sci-fi and horror tend to, I think, lean themselves pretty nicely towards dealing with like more grounded stuff because people aren't always expecting it. And you can kind of weave it in between all the sort of the world building you have to do in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming or preachy.
Yeah, that's a terrible engineer, is all I know. Yeah. Like I don't know. Like I kind of like part of me wants to I want y'all to go and I want y'all to check out all 3 issues because those first 2 issues were a phenomenal read, man. They really were.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, dude. And I'm not gonna lie, I had to rush through them, but I have to rush through everything anymore. That's just
That's
not right. But they're a great read, man. I'm hoping that once I get some more free time, I want to go back and look at them. Even though I hate reading digital, people keep sending me digital comics. And I'm like, you all suck.
I'm just sorry. I will look. I will get some physical requiems to you.
Don't. I know what it costs to ship from Canada. I don't even want to know what it would cost you to ship that from Australia. Are you?
No, if it makes you feel better, we have a US fulfillment partner, so it would come from the US. Especially with the tariffs at the moment, we don't, and a lot of our readers are in the US. We don't want to mess around with that, so everything is in the US, and we'll have stuff going out from the US, but nothing coming in.
And you did that exclusively for the tariffs, or you just ran like that period?
Exclusively so we use a US fulfillment partner regardless because it's just cheaper to send stuff obviously from the US to the US. But we've also going with a US printer this time because of the tariffs. Last time we used a really wonderful Chinese printer, but obviously we don't want to deal with stuff getting books getting stuck at ports and dealing with tariffs and stuff. So it's just easier and significantly less stress to get done in the US and we have a wonderful comics printing partner we've used before. It's just that, to be frank, because like places like China and Canada do so much graphic printing and comic printing, they're just quicker and better at it than a lot of places in the continental US. And that's not a slight to any printers in the US. There are some great comic printers. It's just a statement about capacity.
Well, and also, like you said, repetition breeds excellence. Like you said, as far as with colors,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
letters, and all that. The more you do something,
100%.
the better you're naturally going to be at it. I'd like to think that if you looked at the very first episode I did in the questionnaire, and then you looked at this one, you'd be like, "Oh, look, he doesn't say the F word all the time. That's a plus." First
It's got
episode,
a little more family friendly.
man, I'd like to think we got it pretty family friendly, depending on who we're bringing on. Sometimes some of these comic book creators just, man, but
Yeah, we can.
well, at the same time, it's one of those things you have to judge who you're bringing on. When I'm bringing on a Tim Seeley, I shouldn't expect the episode to be clean. I've read a great deal of
No.
Tim Seeley's work. I love it. It's not family friendly.
Yeah, no. If you bring on the guy who wrote Money Shot, expecting it to be clean, you've made a dire mistake.
I love that book. Great book. Everybody, if you're like at least 16, go check it out. I'm gonna put an age limit on that one now. I feel like 16 is a good marker. Maybe it should be 18. I don't know. Let your parent decide. Make your parent check that book out like before you go check it out. Right? That's all I'm
Yep.
saying. Um, but back to the tariffs, man. Have you seen all of these tariffs that have happened? Have you seen anything to where it's directly affected the comic industry or what you're doing
Yeah,
specifically?
totally. So talking about my experience, I guess, as a creator outside of the US. So I live in Sydney, Australia. Every publisher I work with pretty much is in the US. So I've done some short stuff with some local publishers, but the industry isn't particularly big here, right? So for any creators that are based here that work in comics full time, we pretty much always work in the US industry. Mm. So initially, when the tariffs were announced, here our postal service, Australia Post, stopped package shipping to the US. And this was quite common in a lot of different countries where just initially while they were trying to figure out the tariffs, there was maybe a month or, a month or a little bit under where you just couldn't ship a package to the US as a consumer. Like, I'm sure you could probably figure it out. You could do it as like a company, but yeah, as a consumer, if I just wanted to send like you, for instance, a comic from here in a little package, I couldn't do it. So yeah, so that kind of gives you an idea of how, at least to the outside world, how isolationist these policies are, because they really kind of damage the connective tissue that connects, America with a lot of other places in the world. Yeah, so there was that, and now the packages are up and running again, but there would be an additional tariff involved. I'm not sure what it is. I know in the UK, someone was complaining that I think the tariff was like 3 times, like with meaning that they were paying instead of $10 in post 30 or something ridiculous. So basically, my kind of feeling, and having had stuff stuck at customs here, and having dealt with like tariff stuff in my own country, I'm like, the last thing I want to do is deal with the tariffs in another country overseas, like stuff stuck by border at the border in another country and trying to sort that out. Um, so that's why we're doing it all in America. But yeah, 100% is damaging stuff. I mean, it's going to ravage the Kickstarter environment quite a bit, I think, mainly for like Canadian creators. I think because a lot of anyone in Australia, I think, was already, if we had a lot of US customers, we were already shipping out of the US anyway, just out of a cost. Um, but for people who were near the US, like Canada, I can imagine this is going to have a real impact on Canadian Kickstarter creators
I,
who have
I,
a lot of customers in the US.
mm, I mean, and we deal with a lot. I've had so many great Canadian creators on the show, and several times there's several that are like work directly with the show, from Scott to Shiro to I mean Mike up there. I mean there's so many. And yeah, I've heard some stories. Like, I know some creators that are pretty much like, I'm not going to America until you all figure this out. And they're right up in
Yeah,
Canada. Yeah, like, and
I mean,
wanted to attend cons. Like, wanted to come and attend cons, but we're just like, no.
I mean, in all fairness, like I'm not going to the US this year. I'm going to the UK to Thought Bubble instead. And prior post COVID and prior to the new administration, like I would go to the US once to twice a year for conventions. So yeah, it definitely, I want to return next year, but I don't know what that's going to look like. I think for a lot of creators, uh, there's already ambiguity around like the visa waiver, which a lot of companies have. So the ESTA, it's called, which is how I travel to the US. And there's some exceptions for like work conventions, but the lines are a bit blurry. So already there's like ambiguity around that. And I've heard stories of people tangentially connected to me who have been turned away at the border, have gotten to the US and not allowed in. So yeah, it is scary, and flights aren't cheap to go halfway across the world. So it's, yeah, at the moment it's just not on the cards. And I mean, I guess the flip side of that is if you're an American creator in the US, this is a really good time to hustle your butt off, right? A lot of the, like the comp you haven't, like obviously being in the US is a bit of a nightmare right now, but at least when it comes specifically to networking and comics, you have an advantage. You've always had a geographical advantage. You now have an extra one because a lot of the people who would travel in uh, can't do it. So that would be the one, like, I don't even know if silver lining as much as like, hey, this is one way you can exploit this horrible situation if you are an emerging creator in the US.
Yeah, I don't think that is any kind of silver lining because of what it does to the community and
Not at
everything.
all.
Yeah,
No, not
overall.
at all.
But it is something that
Yeah,
if you were an American creator, you could definitely leverage the situation to your advantage. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, and I think it's not so much about silver linings as much as like just I think as a comic creator, you've got to be pretty nimble and adaptive. So I think that's kind of one way you can adapt to the situation, right? Because we can't control what's going on in the state of the world really, but we can, I guess, control what we do within it. So that is, yeah. That's what but you're right. Like it's not a silver lining. It's isolating the comics industry. It's going to limit the talent pool. It's going to affect a lot of overseas creators who do a lot of great work. So it's ultimately like really, really bad. But that's one way you could potentially adapt to it.
Yeah, and I mean, because I could not tell you how many creators we've had from overseas on the show. I mean, I know we've hit quite a few different countries within the span that the show's ran, which I think is getting close. I don't know, like 3 years or something. We're in the third season. I don't know how long life
Incredible.
got. It's going right. Um, but oh man, that's just it's weird to realize that the current sitting president, has negatively affected the comic book industry.
We need to restart this whole commercial
Yeah.
because people could probably hear
That's
Pokemon in the background.
Yeah.
Please check out this amazing promotion that we have prepared with the questionnaire.
I'm the Unknown Factor. This right here is the obscure fragment.
Are watching this show
Yeah, I'll do editing.
with the questionnaire.
So we've edited this awesome commercial together, y'all.
90% off.
We are not giving 90% off.
No, I mean 9.
How about 20?
The only thing that you have to do is enter that code that you have right there.
9.
No, 20.
10.
How about 20?
I'm printing your comics today with Studio Comics Press.
Just use this code right here, right here, right here. Look, I put it somewhere. All right, it's probably actually right here, right here, right. It's right under your chin. It says Quest 24.
That code you gotta enter in our website, and then you will get a whipping discount of 20% in any of the items or products that we have on the website.
9.
20.
9.
20%.
9.
All right.
9.
He wants to give you 9% off. I, as well as Alfonso over there on Studio Comics, want to give you 20% off.
You can get it right there with this amazing code. Just enter it right here. Yeah, just right there. There.
Use that code over at Studio Comics to get 20% off.
Thank you very much. This is a special one for all our friends of the questionnaire.
Type in Quest 24 when you check out, man. You can figure out the percentage you'll get right then because it'll show in your order.
Yeah,
Right?
9% off.
It's 20%.
The Questionnaire, the best current comic book podcast existing around.
So happy to have Studio Comics as our very, very first sponsor. Say Studio Comics!
Studio Comics!
Don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and do all the stuff that you have to do.
I'm the Unknown Factor with the questionnaire. Make sure you check it out.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I mean, these ripples, yeah. I mean, look, I don't want to get particularly political, but I think the world is very interconnected now. And I think a lot of the attitude around the current administration, this idea that America props up the world. And, I think in a lot of ways the opposite's true. Like the world props up America, and the comic book industry is just a small part of that. Like obviously there are a lot of amazing American creators, but there's also a lot of incredible, creators in in other hubs around the world. The community here in Australia is growing. There's some in New Zealand, South America, Brazil. There's so many wonderful creators that contribute so much to the industry. So current policies are making it really hard for us to continue to contribute.
Oh wait, do you know some creators from Brazil?
Yeah, so Rob Reese, I don't know him super well, but he's wonderful. Rob Reese, who's done a bunch of stuff with Carl Higgins. And then Fabi, and I'm probably going to butcher her last name, Fabi Marquez, who's an incredible colorist, also from Brazil.
I won't lie, if you could link me up with one of them, I think it would be hilarious. The reason I think it would be hilarious is because I'm from Brazil.
Oh, incredible. Yeah.
Not
Well,
South
I'll see what I
America.
can do.
Yeah, not South America, but I'm from Brazil, Indiana.
That's incredible. That's so
So,
funny.
so like, there's kind of been a goal of mine where I'm like, especially when the show started going more
Yeah.
international, I'm like, I just want to get somebody on Brazil. So when I bring them on, I can be
Um,
like, someone from my hometown, and then be like, what are you talking about? I
just
live
like
in
super good
Brazil.
music.
Yeah, like it's a country, not a town. What podcast did I come on to?
Yeah, well, I'll see if I can link you up with Fabi. They're wonderful, and their color work's incredible. So they're currently doing some big two stuff, but I feel like the book that they might probably most well known for is Barbaric over at Vault. So they've been the colorist on that for the last two story arcs, and they're incredible. They're like obviously all coloring has energy, but their art, their coloring in particular, just has a real kind of like energy and like a gut punch to it that I really like.
Nice, man. Yeah, and we love to have a colorist over here. I think it's important to highlight the different aspects and creators within comics that people don't think of so much. And I think the people that really get the short end of that stick, I think the letterer probably gets the shortest end of that stick.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. I think, what, I think within comics now, I think like within creators, I think lettering has really been going through a bit of a renaissance in terms of like, you've had stuff, couple of letterers like Hassan and then Adida who have just done incredible work, and their work, they're really talented letterers in the sense that like their work can either be quite loud and there's work they've done where the lettering is quite prominent, and then stuff where their lettering just disappears and just is really subtle. But I think through the rise in some of that kind of louder lettering style that's happened, I think people have really been able to like fully appreciate how much lettering adds. And I think color sometimes get a bit lost nowadays, but I think in terms of like readers, I think anyone who's not the artist or writer, I think often they don't. I don't know of too many like just comic readers who will read a book based on like who the colorist is. Whereas like if I hear like Jordi Belair is on something or Tamara Bonvillain, like I'll at least like make sure I flick through that book because I know it's going to look stunning, and that's like a reason for me to pick up the book.
See, and I wish, and that's a, I don't mean to get political, but the fact that like that has affected the comic book industry annoys me because I think comics will always hold a place that is very important to us as a species, even because I think people don't realize how much that's the first way you read. I mean, like we start out reading picture
Mm.
books. Everybody did, you know. So if you can adapt and get them to reading
Yeah,
picture books, I think it's a quicker way to get them reading actual books as opposed to anything else. And I'm
totally.
not taking this any more political. I'm gonna stop because I'm getting
Well,
annoyed.
no, the one thing I was going to say in terms of what you bring up about comics, right, is that they are, to me, there is something really universal and pivotal to the human experience about comics, right? So it's without getting too like wanky and academic with it, Scott McCloud in Understanding talks about this idea of you can tell I've been like teaching for the last couple of weeks, but talks about this idea of closure, which is essentially the way our mind tries to create patterns out of chaos. And it's the core mechanic when we're looking at comics, right? Is we see two images side by side, our brain immediately tries to figure out what the relationship and what the meaning between the two is. So, for an example, if I show you a picture of a baby, you're like, it's a baby, cool. If I was to then show you that picture of a baby and next to it a picture of a fire, you'd be like, oh, okay, like suddenly the meaning has changed, suddenly the sense of danger just from adding, but the baby hasn't, image of the baby hasn't changed, we've just added an image and your brain is linking the two. So closure is a pretty, my understanding of it's a pretty core human thing. We're always trying to make connections. If we see a cloud and it looks like something, if we spill like past it's also on the ground, I think it looks like a face, and it kind of comes back to like when we were out on the like savannah and when we had predators, it's like you hear a bush rustling, your mind connects it. Oh, there's a predator. I need to get to safety. So it's that kind of like primal thing. It was a survival mechanism, and even in many ways, we still use it as a survival mechanism. So that closure is so core to humanity, I think, and comics relies almost solely on it. In a way that a lot of other, like all mediums do, but comics really leans into it in a way other mediums don't. And I think that's just the universal why they're just everyone can kind of read a comic and get it.
Okay, but now you said we still use that as a survival instinct. Now, when you say that, do you mean just situational awareness, or are you specifically referring to
Yes.
the reading of a comic? Okay, I just wanted
Yeah,
to, because I thought you
yeah. No,
initially
100%.
meant I thought you initially meant like actually the reading of a comic, and I'm
No, no.
well. Let's be honest, Chrisof, especially with the state of the world nowadays, I think there are plenty of people that use books and comics and movies and film and television to be able to escape from the moment and not feel the pressure, you know.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah. So I think it very much is used as still a survival tool in that regard, in a capacity that most people really probably wouldn't consider it, you know.
No, 100%. I think yeah, there's a really wonderful video that went viral of Ethan Hawke talking about the idea of like the role of art and talking about how like, when your life is going well and things are great, you might not care about like poetry or you might not really care about comics or prose, but suddenly you go through a heartbreak and what are you doing? You're listening to love songs, you're searching for poems about it, you're looking for media, right? You're looking for that connection through media. And in I think our like kind of most vulnerable and raw and human moments, that's where we need stories and and that's where we kind of seek it out, and that's where they kind of, without getting too on my high horse, but that's where they kind of have this healing purpose because it connects us to other people who've been through the same thing.
No, yeah, no, I fully agree with that. I will say that one of my favorite things I've seen was because you said Ethan Hawke. I've seen recently. Man, I am forgetting people's names left and right today, Chrisof. Like I cannot. What's the famous astrophysicist? Come on.
uh, Stephen Hawking.
No, man, he's still alive.
Oh, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Thank you. Um, See, the fact that I could say astrophysicist and in two guesses you got it says something to
Yeah.
that man and what he's been able to accomplish. But no, he said
Oh, I
art.
mean, yeah.
He said art is more important than like pushing out your art as an individual is very important because as a scientist, look, someone's going to discover it. Just because that dude didn't doesn't mean this dude won't. Because it's out there and it exists and it's science. So there's facts behind
Yeah.
it. But when it comes to art, if you have a piece of art that you feel you need to create and you don't create that, nobody's lived your life. Nobody's going to come up with the same thing that
Totally.
you just did. You know? That's one of my
No,
favorite
100%.
things I've seen is that equation, man. And I think that's why it's beautiful that you see the comic book industry and what it was and what it's turned into with the Kickstarters. That's why it annoys the crap out of me to hear that about the tag because I didn't think about that. Like I said, I've tuned the real world out a little bit in the past year, but the fact that
Which is
that has
fair.
it
I,
look, dude, with what you said earlier about your grandpa being like, no, it wasn't as bad in the Cold War.
yeah. Yeah, that was my father-in-law who said
Oh,
that,
fuck.
yeah, who lived through the Cold War and said that he said he's more stressed out now than he was living through the Cold War. So it kind of it put things into perspective for me a little bit. Um, yeah, I think art is always a bellwether, right? So when artists, I mean, artists are always kind of struggling, but when artists are struggling and are being attacked, that's usually a pretty good canary in the coal mine for like, oh, okay, like society isn't super healthy, and things aren't going great. Whereas when art is really appreciated and artists are able to do better, I think that's always a good sign for a society. Um, so I think at the moment things are really tough. And it's ironic because like art is definitely under attack and it's really hard to make art, but ironically like people need it more than ever now because you're right, it's how people are surviving, it's how people are disconnecting, how people are feeling connection with other people, how for a lot of people are understanding the reality we're going through. They're using fiction that deals with similar themes to what's happening in the real world to make sense of the real world. So this is all like really really important.
I know, man. Look, in the past year, and I really really dug back into comics like before that, but just in specifically the past year that everything happened in my life, there's been certain books I've been reading by certain creators. One of them that you've seen me at the very beginning of this episode where I'm reading it and I get to a point and I'm like, I have to put this down for a moment.
Yeah,
Like that,
totally.
yeah, that hit really, really hard. Like really, really hard. I have to put this book down and set it aside for a moment and just woo-saw my brain and watch the Punisher shoot someone in the face. You know? Like that's what I need now.
Palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Look,
It-
Punisher shooting someone in the face is always a good palate cleanser.
That's what I'm saying. Like that was really deep and emotional. Now I need to see John Berthal as the Punisher, just like shatter a coffee mug and proceed to stab someone in the gut with it. That way I
Incredible.
can, I mean, that's just, sometimes you need that in life. What can I say, man? But so I totally understand. I totally agree with that, man. I wonder why it's not viewed, because you brought up the fact that you work for Scholastic as well and do things for Scholastic. I think it's funny because you can get comics through Scholastic. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
comic books. Yet I've still heard from people even recently being like, "Oh, that's not a real book." I'm like, dude, if you can get it from Scholastic,
Yeah.
but your argument's not valid anymore. This
Look,
company right here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just always going to be the way. And I kind of I think I've accepted it as that's kind of what makes comics cool is no one really respects the art form. It's not really seen, at least in Australia and America. In Europe, it's a little bit different. And obviously in Japan as well. But, in America and Australia, it's seen as the kind of delinquent kid, and I like it. I like that. I like that we're kind of left alone to do our own thing. I think the best storytelling and some of the most innovative and interesting storytelling is happening in comics, and half the world thinks that it's just Dogman. Which is a great comic, but it obviously doesn't represent the entirety of all comics. So I kind of like it that way. I mean, it would be nice if we got more money and funding. That's the kind of the one downside. But I like creatively that we're kind of the underdog, because I
I
think a lot of comic creators, myself included, have felt like underdogs a lot of our lives, and we haven't really been found our place. And then we found comics, and suddenly it all kind of makes sense. And I would hate that to be taken away. I don't want lots of hot jocks coming into comics, is what I'm saying.
My counterpoint to that would be,
Yeah.
I think comics. I think you don't meet many a-holes in comics.
No, I wouldn't agree with that.
You wouldn't agree with
I would
that?
completely agree with that.
Oh, you
No, I'd
agree?
completely agree with that.
Okay, I
Yeah.
was like, you're
Yeah.
disagreeing with me? Hold on.
No,
And I mean,
no.
like I said, I've ran the questionnaire for 3 years. For 3 years, I ran an online radio where I dealt with hip hop artists, adult film stars, all kinds of things. And
Yeah.
these adult film stars were always fine and cool and kosher. And everybody that I ever dealt with from the comic book community was. I can't say so much about the hip hop side and music side of things. Yeah.
Money, man. Money, yeah.
Look. In the hip hop side of things, Chrisof, it's not money; it's purely ego driven. Because I knew people that did nothing. They did nothing. They did nothing, and they thought they were God's gift to the stage. And I'm like, can I just shoot you off of it? Because I really am annoyed now. And I mean, I had personal interactions with a lot of people.
Incredible.
But my point is so within that community, you don't find a lot of people that are just downtrodden, just mean kind of individuals. So my counterpoint to, like I said, is what if comics were really just accepted? If people just really read them? And what if it had a good outcome? No, Christoph, I think people should read all the comics because I think it would make them more empathetic to everyone else's situation. Yeah.
Look, yeah, I completely agree. And I think on the flip side, I would say that there are spaces where comics are beloved and welcomed. And one of those spaces is, ironically, I'm right outside my local library, but libraries, at least, I assume it's similar in the US, but the biggest champions of comics you'll ever meet are librarians, because they're on the ground floor. They see what people are reading. They see what people are borrowing. They see what gets people interested in reading. And for a lot of people, it's comics.
That's hilarious because I literally just seen a post on Reddit from a librarian talking about how there's a kid that was coming in getting Garfield, and now they're getting all kinds of other things, and they've really expanded the comics. And then, like personally, I've started getting my boy, like we always have went to the library and got this and that, but it's just evolved because he's 6 now. And I recently started reading him Bone from the library, and he loves it. At 6 years old, and I'm just sitting there reading this to him, and I'm like, this is crazy because I know reading this book to him, there are certain concepts that he does not get. Because
Yeah,
have you ever read Bone?
I haven't. It's on my shelf. It's on my to-do list, or to
It,
read list rather.
it's really good. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, yeah.
But of there's a lot there. You know what I'm saying? That I don't think you would ever understand as a 6-year-old just based on the emotions and everything. But I think it's also good
Mm.
to be able to introduce that to somebody at that young age because it gives them an initial concept to guide off of that otherwise they're not going to have. And not to say specifically Bone. There's 1,000 other comics and books out there that could do that. But I think that's important, man. And you're right. Look, for everyone out there, if you're like, I want to get into comics, I don't know where to start. Start at your library.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I don't know what the situation is like in the US. But I think it's worth pointing out, at least in Australia and a lot of other countries, we have a really wonderful royalty scheme where I get paid when people borrow books. So I get a royalty statement at the end of the year that is based. I think I get like roughly like 20 cents if anyone borrows a book. So long term, my books being library is great. And it's it's a really valid way to keep supporting creators because often people will be like, well, I want to pay for the book. Well, you are if you're borrowing it from a library, at least here. So I think that's something really important, that it's a really valid way. And I've never met a creator who gets upset when someone says, I read your book at a library. We love it.
I would find if I found a creator that was like, and I said, "Hey man, I read your book in the library," and they got upset with it, I would be like, "I don't like you as a creator anymore. Never mind. I'm never
Yeah,
reading
totally.
your books again. Like, you have a great day, sir," and I would walk away, and that would literally be the end. Like, because you should just, yeah, it's. Oh, that's funny. I mean, I think they would appreciate it more than it being read digitally. God knows those. The revenue you get from that, I'd assume, is probably less than what you get from the library.
Yeah, I haven't done a whole bunch of digital stuff, but yeah, I would assume so. But look, I think, or in terms of like when I think of digital, right? Obviously, I've had friends who've had people come up and say, "Oh, I pirated your books," and it's like, don't say that. Like, I would. The library beats the library so much better than that.
You know what though? Sometimes you want a book that the library won't keep.
Look, true.
I mean, like, look, I don't expect to walk into a local library, and if I found like you said, Money Shot, for instance, I don't expect to find that on the shelves. I don't expect to find
Yeah.
Caust on the shelves. Actually, I think I did find that at a
Oh
library.
yeah.
So that's how I. Oh shit! That's how I read that. I got Caust from a library.
Incredible.
That book should
I
not
love
be in
this
a
for you.
library. I don't. I don't. I,
No,
you know
I
what?
mean,
I take that back. It should be in every library. But then you need to go to the fact that I think that's the funny thing when you go to the library, man. If the librarians aren't kind of aware of the books, kids could get a hold of stuff they shouldn't have really quickly.
100%. No,
Eh.
I've definitely had. I once rescued like 100 graphic novels from a school library that were all they'd bought it not realizing they were inappropriate for kids.
Tell me what the worst one was.
Um, Great, this is a good question. I'm trying to think. They had The Walking Dead, which wasn't too bad. They had some Brian K. Vaughan, not Saga or anything, but I think they had like Pride of Baghdad by him and some other Brian K. Vaughan stuff. I think they might have had Ex Machina and some stuff that was not okay for kids.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest anything from
And
Brian.
and they had and
Oh,
no, and they had Sandman as well, which I think is quite adult.
yeah, that's a little much for grade school. Like, get Bone.
Yeah, totally.
or technically, funnily enough, they could even get your Rick and Morty comics.
Totally, because I mean all the Rick and Morty stuff. I always feel weird about selling it to kids, but it is fairly clean. And ironically, it's kids who buy the comics. I don't usually get adults. It's always like kids, and their parents will buy it for them because they just want them off the iPad.
That and see that's the other fundamental thing about comics that I think is so important is it's something that will get children off electronic devices, and
So
I'm on my device way more than I would like to be, but that's because I need it for my job more than anything else. I'll be real honest. And I got to run this show. Hopefully y'all watch it and go find some books and read them. There's great stuff out there. There's a link in the description to a really cool issue 3 of Requiem that Chrisof's got coming out, right? You can check that out, right? Plus you can pick up past 2 issues on that Kickstarter, right?
yeah, 100%. They'll all be available through the Kickstarter.
All right, just wanted to make sure because I don't know. Could someone grab issue 3 and pick up right there, or would they really have need to read the first 2 issues?
Yeah, you kind of need to read the first 2 issues. We're trying to make it so there's like a bunch of digital catch-up packs and ways to cheaply get the first 2. But yeah, I would say they're fairly interlinked. So it would be they don't really stand on their own. You need to like read them in sequence, I would say.
Yeah, I feel like with reading that story that I don't know. Yeah, that's when you definitely have to read the. I mean, I haven't read issue 3 yet, but if it definitely is going the way to where it's like, hey, you need to read all of this. You're going to be really confused as to where this thing came from, and yeah, and I'm just curious to how personal you're going to take that comic.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can kind of talk to that. I mean, I think in terms of personal, it's really about like for me, one of my biggest fears is like memory. So my memory's getting worse as I get older, and often your memory is such a core part of how you experience and understand reality, right? Like almost along with the sense, because your senses tell you what's happening right in this exact moment. But anything past that, you're reliant on your memory. So when your memory starts to become unreliable, and I've had moments where I've had to like rely on other people's recollections of stuff I've like said or done, it's terrifying. So that's kind of the first thing that came out of it, like a memory is a sense and how blind we are without it. So it definitely came out of that like personal, visceral discomfort at my memory getting worse as I've aged.
Wait, how old are you?
I'm 34. Look, your face says it all. But look, even like when I in my 30s, I noticed like just my memory wasn't as good. It was really sharp in my 20s, and now I have to like write stuff down more. So it's just it's just kind of an observation as I've changed and grown how things I used to be able to rely on, I can't rely on as much anymore. And the fear and anxiety that comes with that.
I mean, that's understandable, and you can definitely see you playing on that concept within the first 2 issues. Um, it's just, I feel like there's a horror aspect that you're gonna take that's gonna be terrible. I don't know how else to say it. I feel like there's a bit of
Yeah,
a.
that's fair.
I feel like there's just a touch of like the Thing in there.
Oh, for sure. No, 100%. I mean, I'd look at stuff like Alien, The Thing, all those kind of those think sci-fi horror is what we're kind of riffing on, like with that kind of, I guess, spin on it, which is the reliance on the characters having to continually wipe their memory. But yeah, definitely plays on that kind of stuff.
I mean, there have been times where I'd like to have wiped my memory like in a moment, but if someone had ever done it, I'd have probably been like, recall it back. I didn't want the total recall. You know what I mean? On the note of aliens, though, I just have to ask, man, are you watching Alien Earth?
Yeah, I really liked it. I think it was a bit. I mean, I think I thought it was good. I think a lot of people who like Alien are reticent to admit, but an overwhelming majority of Alien stuff is subpar. I mean, the first 2 movies are great, but like a lot of the other stuff is fine. It's not amazing. So I think Alien Earth wasn't like perfect, but I think it was definitely one of the stronger entries into the franchise, and I think they did a good job of doing something interesting in a franchise that suffers from escalation fatigue where in each movie they have to do something new with the alien to make it scarier. So I like that they've changed stuff up enough that they haven't had to like be like, oh, this one goes invisible, this one has new powers, because that's kind of how a lot of the others work, is like it's a human alien hybrid or whatever. So
I mean, yeah, and then in the Predator Alien hybrid, which those are the worst
the
two
Predalien,
films.
yeah.
Yeah, those are the worst two
Okay.
films from that whole series. The Alien Predator ones, dude, I love those films, man. I really do. But that's because I read the comics long before they ever made the films. So my expectations were like, you can't see my hand. They were really, really high because those comics were phenomenal. And then like the film went through the Earth's core and just really sucked. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think they did do something very
totally.
How do you make sure in dealing with Requiem, how do you make sure you're not drawing from too much and you are making a certain amount of an original concept in that, which I do feel like you've achieved. I want to point out, man, I really love that. But like, what do you do to make sure you're not drawing on something too much?
That's a great question. I mean, I think every writer will have a different answer. So I co-write it with David Hazan, who also writes Nottingham, and he is a big help. Like he kind of stops a lot of gaps in because a lot of my work is quite personal, whereas he does a lot more genre stuff. So I think he really helped me with the genre stuff and the bleakness of it all, and I think I was able to help him with bringing the kind of personal experience into it. So I think the personal factor and being clear about what you want to deal with thematically will always bring clarity. Because, it's what you're saying before about like everyone has a personal experience, and experiences the world differently. So everyone's going to have a different point of view and like thing they want to share or message, for lack of a better word. So I think that element, the theme and what you're trying to communicate through the story, I think that's what brings the X factor when you're dealing with well-trodden genre tropes.
Yeah, and man, you brought in like Nottingham. That's totally on my I need to read list. I have heard great things about that book.
It's really good.
Yeah, man, stop! I swear. Every time I do a quest, I bring on some great creator, and I'm like, oh, you know them 3 people? You should have them hit me up, and then you should stop affecting my pocketbook, making it to where I have to go buy more books. It's a pain in my rear. But I want to point out for all y'all out there watching, man, I hope you've enjoyed this quest. What I want you to do is click the link in the description, right? Go check out Chrisof's Kickstarter. I don't have my normal in-bit because Chrisof didn't fill out a new questionnaire because I didn't send it because I was lazy, because life's been bizarre, man. What am I gonna do? So if you want to torture Chrisof, what I want you to do is lobby for more tariffs.
I might need to get that suicide net installed.
Now, if you want to do Chrisof and every other international creator a favor, lobby against them. Because they're
Please, yeah.
terrible. And they are affecting art negatively. We already have AI doing that. The AI doesn't need help affecting. It doesn't. It doesn't need any help, man. Are you serious? The fact that like my boy wanted to watch some AI video on, because sometimes I watch like little car wrecks or this or that, but I'm just getting around. And there was an AI video of like cats, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna think this is cute. So teach your kids. Get stuff from real people so you can learn real things. AI is just going to corrupt your brain, right? And then make it to where you can't remember and you'll need a Requiem, right? But besides that, look, Chrisof, it's been a pleasure, man. For all y'all out there, I just want you to do 3 things. 3 things. 1, always give it that thumbs up. 2, always get your comic on. 3, have a good night, y'all. Because see, Chrisof, it's early. Take this phone call. Take this phone call. Take the phone call. Take care, y'all.
Thank you, everybody, for watching
the Questionnaire podcast. Keep a listen out to these crazy guys.
I had known, I would have prepared.
I don't know that I'd made that connection myself.
The Questionnaire.
Stay spooky, stay safe, stay nice.
See you on the next show.